The previous nights had been just as loud and disorderly as this one. But something was off with this one. No matter how hard you try to forget some parts of life, they just won't budge. That was definitely a memorable occasion. That fateful evening when lines between realities melted and changed irrevocably. The first hints of morning were just breaking through the curtains as I pulled into my driveway. It was very unbearable for me. I felt physically and mentally drained. However, my mind was a maelstrom of intolerable chaos. I remained clad in the form-fitting, sleeveless, low-cut mini dress that I had selected for the celebration. No matter where I went that night, it clung to every curve and demanded attention. But as I looked into the mirror, the only thing I could make out was the void that existed within my eyes. Both my hair and makeup had gotten all over the place. However, it was irrelevant. Nothing mattered as much as the loneliness I felt on the inside. As usual, my mom was fast asleep in her bed. Elisa, my mother. This woman had been through a lot and she was 45 years old. As if we weren't important, my dad uprooted our family when I was 5 years old. She persevered through the agony and created a life for our family. But I was aware of the fissures it created in her, the wounds she masked so masterfully. Her second husband, Connor, came next. Upon moving in 3 years ago, Connor altered the entire atmosphere of our house. Despite his advanced years, Connor radiated self-assurance and command. He exuded an aura of quiet strength and had an athletic build that made him appear much younger than his actual age. His dark hair was nicely combed and had gray streaks. He had an irresistible charisma that drew attention from all directions. What really got to me, though, was his genuine concern for my mom, me, and our family as a whole. Seriously, I didn't know what to do with the feelings that had begun to form for him. The light in the living room was on when I entered the house. Sitting on the couch, he had a book in one hand and his shirt collar undone. As I faltered into the doorway, his sharp black gaze locked upon mine. His eyes conveyed a multitude of emotions: disappointment, worry, and maybe even something more I was afraid to mention. "Alessandra, are you even aware of the time?" His question was composed, although it betrayed his latent dissatisfaction. "Is this happening again?" The question eluded me. As I attempted to maintain my equilibrium, my heels made an unsteady clicking sound on the hardwood floor. He stared at me intently, taking note of my smudged eyeliner, my unkempt clothes, and the fact that I avoided looking him in the eye. "Excuse me, Connor." I spoke something, but I had no idea what I was requesting. I was about to finish speaking when he got up from the couch and walked purposefully up to me. His earthy, woodsy aroma was so close I could just smell him, and it was reassuring and calming. Uncontrollably, my heart raced. "You can't keep doing this," he remarked in a gentle but firmly assertive voice. "Is the prospect of your mom's reaction to seeing you in this state even on your mind?" The impact of his remarks was devastating. As tears accumulated in my eyes, my vision became hazy. I spoke softly, my voice quivering, "Since you had no idea, I am at a loss as to how to replace the void that I feel." Just for an instant he stood motionless. His eyes exhibited a sensitivity that caused my chest to ache. He spoke to Alessandra in a more subdued, nearly broken tone. "I will not sit idly by while you ruin yourself." When my legs finally gave out, I flopped into the couch in my corner. Wearing such a form-fitting garment just served to heighten my sense of exposure. As he knelt down next to me, his gaze met mine, and the space between us became increasingly dense. "As he spoke to you, Alessandra," his voice betrayed a mix of admiration and impatience, "you are stunning. You are unique." How were they oblivious to it? This isn't something you can do to yourself, though. Something profound was aroused in me by his remarks. I had never felt anything like his gaze or the gentle, restrained passion in his speech before. Upon locking eyes with him, my breath caught, and I understood then that my life would never be the same. If you want to see more of this wacky story before it gets much crazier, subscribe to my channel and enable notifications. I am incredibly grateful for your encouragement through the comments and likes at the end of the tale. As soon as he embraced me, I felt all the barriers I had ever constructed crumble. I could feel my body quivering slightly in his powerful arms, even though my garment was somewhat snug. His comforting presence ushered me into an unfamiliar state of tranquility as he led me to my room. Nobody had ever made me feel that way before. After enduring several male betrayals as a child without a father figure, Connor's physical prowess and mere presence seemed mystical. Still, I had no clue he would have such a profound impact on my life, or that my actions toward him would escalate the situation. He placed me on my bed with great care. His eyes, which were perpetually cautious and controlled, failed to linger on the hem of my dress that had ridden up past my knees. On the contrary, I couldn't help but notice another aspect of his stare. Aside from tension, it was more than that. It served a defensive purpose, but perhaps there was more to it than that. When I noticed it, my heart started racing. He was married to my mom, but he was also the only guy who ever took the time to get to know me and my struggles. The closer we got, the more I felt like our lives were on the brink of a dramatic shift. "Alessandra, you need to get some sleep," he whispered gently. As he draped the blanket over me, we shared a brief glance. "You are deserving of better, and you must stop abusing yourself in this way." My thoughts and emotions were entirely absorbed by him. I was unable to speak since my eyes were closed. His embrace and the comforting sound of his voice lingered in my mind. What exactly was it, if anything at all, beyond trust? Although I was unaware, I was aware of one thing. That night, my sentiments for Connor changed, and I knew things were going to become more complicated. I had formed a new habit of making time with Connor more often. It seemed as if my mom, Elisa, had slipped into a trance. Her transformation was dramatic. She had once been a vibrant soul, but the years and the scars of isolation had transformed her. But Connor remained lively, captivating, and full of an ardor he fought to contain. His enthralling nature was enhanced by that. With the passing of time, our chats became increasingly lengthy and profound. At the kitchen table, we would converse for hours, covering all sorts of topics and nothing in particular. In the living room, we would occasionally watch a movie and then talk about it. Whatever these seemingly little things were, they were the ones that cemented our bond. I was more engrossed with every word Connor spoke. I felt like I had to figure out what was going on with every gaze and movement. Even though I was a woman, I could feel his affections for me. Something was there in his silences, in the expressions he gave me that were subtle but deliberate. Something that made my heart sing. For a moment, I felt like the pieces were finally fitting together. I was getting home sober, drinking less, and losing interest in going out. A whole new universe became accessible to me during my time with Connor. Once again, our conversations gave my life purpose. Everything came crashing down that night, though, since that was the night I messed everything up. I felt a void inside as I vacillated between different parties. I could no longer endure how I felt for Connor. I was unable to inform him. What am I missing? He was married to my mom, but he was also the one person I could always count on for a steady relationship. I drank more that night than I ever had before because this catastrophe tore me to shreds. By the time it was over, my pals had reached their breaking point and had contacted Connor for help. Everything shifted after that. All I could feel when Connor drove me home was humiliation. My makeup had dripped down my cheeks, my dress was crumpled, and my eyes were half closed. It was completely invisible to me that my mom wasn't at home. I was led into the living room by Connor, who took hold of my arm. However, his touch had a distinct sensation this time. Despite its firmness, a profound sense of care lurked behind. "Good day, Alessandra. Please tell me what I'm looking at." His voice grew increasingly angry as he spoke. "Why? I thought we had moved on from this. I assumed you were more cheerful now that you were better. This? I've been attempting to assist you. Is this it?" His voice's hint of disappointment jolted me. I stared at him while I fought for balance. The words refused to come out of my mouth. I stood motionless as he looked into my eyes. Of course he was furious, but that wasn't all. A second later, he covered his face, ran his fingers through his hair, and took a big breath. "How come, Alessandra? Why are you subjecting yourself to this?" His voice was gentler when he asked this time, but his dissatisfaction was still glaring. I parted my lips for a second, but nothing came out. Then, with the confidence the drink had bestowed upon me, I lowered all of my defenses. I told Connor it was because I love you. Like a sledgehammer, my comments reverberated around the room. Connor was taken aback, and his expression turned to one of frozen disbelief. I persisted, though. My hands found a comfortable spot on his chest as I moved closer to him. "This time, I was more subdued but adamant in telling you that I love you. And then, out of nowhere, I mashed my lips to his. Everything I had been holding inside, my emotions, my turmoil, washed away in a single kiss. I completely let myself go, not knowing if he would embrace the moment or reject it. It was as if time stood still the moment my lips met his warm. On the other hand, I was also aware that this was the turning point when things would begin to alter irrevocably. My kiss left Connor momentarily frozen, as if he didn't know what to do. His actions were slow and hesitant as he tentatively put his hands on my shoulders and pulled me back. That guarded expression remained when we locked gazes. However, beneath it, an additional element persisted. He warned Alessandra in a low but harsh voice that she was too intoxicated to drive. You believe your current emotions are a result of your lack of control. You may come to regret this decision when you awaken tomorrow. Anger welled up inside of me the moment I heard those words. My thoughts became very clear, even through the alcohol's haze. Connor, I corrected calmly. You can't blame the drink for this. These emotions had been building up for some time. I'm sick of denying this feeling that I've had for so long. As a result, Connor's expression changed. He couldn't make up his mind. He was in a state of shock. Despite his best efforts, I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. I went on to say that I'm more than a passing fling in your eyes. Throughout my life, you have been my rock. You have made an effort to comprehend my needs. No one, not even my mom, went there. Yet you have always recognized me. With a deep breath, Connor remained silent. I refused to give in, even as tears welled up in my eyes. Connor, I implore you to hear me out. Seeing you with my mom must be really lonely. I can feel her energy dwindling. Plus, you're an admiral of a man to tell her that. I can tell it no matter what you do. In the same way that you're lonely, I am lonely. And we were able to meet up. Then why are you trying to stop it? All around the room, my words resounded. Connor's face became more kind. A profound melancholy appeared to replace the uncertainty on his countenance. He dropped his arms to his sides, but he never took his gaze off of me. With my hands on his, I moved closer. Do you also sense it? Please, I whispered. Recognize it. Because it is palpable. Exactly like how I am. Connor lowered his shoulders. Something inside of him seemed to crack at that very instant. That old attraction was back as his gaze met mine once more. He inhaled deeply. After what seemed like an eternity of internal struggle, he eventually drew near to me. Once again our lips met. On this occasion with greater resolve. Increasing the level of intensity, there was no longer any distance between us. With a single kiss, he let out all of his suppressed feelings. He drew me near as his hands went around my waist. Everything came to a halt at that same second. Every one of our feelings of isolation, annoyance, and uncertainty, every one of them vanished. Whispers of Connor's voice reached my ears as I was embraced by him. Alessandra, perhaps you are correct. Possibly we are no longer able to escape this. Words like those transformed the world. I had a feeling that night that things would change forever. We were kissing more passionately as Connor wrapped his hands tightly around my waist. My chest felt like it was going to explode from the intense beating of my heart. I was entirely at his mercy. Being held by him made me feel entirely exposed. As they slipped around his neck, my hands quivered. His shirt buttons were lightly touched by my fingers. Then, almost out of nowhere, I began to undo them. I muttered to Connor, my voice quivering with fear. Unfortunately, I was speechless. I yearned to cling to that very second. All my troubles and anxieties seemed to melt away in that second. The straps of my mini dress were delicately slipped off my shoulders. While the cloth ran down my body, Connor couldn't take his gaze off of me. Everything felt much more intense because of the resolve and attraction in his eyes. You're really stunning, Alessandra, he said with an intense, passionate voice. I was taken aback when I heard those words. With Connor's powerful hands resting on my waist, I sank gently into the couch. He engulfed me with his massive frame. Not only did I feel protected, but I also felt wanted and unique in a way that I had never felt before. Even when Connor drew near, I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. Strong and mesmerizing, his massive stature and tight, muscular chest created an eerie and hypnotic aura about me. As he threw his shirt to the side, he halted briefly and met my gaze. Is Alessandra certain? With a gentle yet profound tone, he inquired. A subtle smile curved over the edge of my mouth as my gaze met his. My certainty has never been higher. I spoke in a barely audible whisper. Connor leaned over me before I could even complete my statement. He had one knee firmly planted on the floor and the other braced against the edge of the couch. More than anything else, the sensation of his weight and presence was overwhelming. I felt a chill run down my spine as his skin touched mine, warm and intimate. Something enormous began to stir within me. Connor walked gently, his eyes filled with affection as he glanced at me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel lonely because everything was so picturesque. I mumbled to Connor, "I'm not alone anymore," as I was absolutely breathless. In a whisper, Connor added, "Would you believe me if I said I don't either?" He was obviously gasping for air. Once that happened, we both decided to just let go. A feeling of warmth was developing within me. I gently traced my fingers across his back. It seemed like the world had stopped spinning when Connor's powerful arms around me. Nothing else was significant at that time. There was no one else around, just the two of us, and the intensity of the moment dissolved reality. Connor reclined on the sofa and embraced me tightly. As I leaned my head on his chest, I felt his heartbeat pulsating steadily. The clamor and mayhem of the past seemed to fade away in an instant, replaced solely by the tranquility of the present. Feeling at peace within him, I delicately stroked my fingers over his powerful arm. I managed to utter the words "Connor" in a scarcely audible whisper. "The next step is what? Do you know where we're going?" He spoke to Alessandra with a compassionate tone, telling her not to worry about the future. "The weight of your long-term feelings of isolation shouldn't be a burden any longer. Please put it aside tonight. Allow yourself to be carried to sleep by the knowledge that you are not alone at this very moment." My last line of resistance crumbled under the weight of his remarks. I couldn't help but smile even as a few tears streamed down my cheeks. Always before had I felt such a sense of security. My sense of being seen, understood, and cared for was heightened for the very first time. "Thanks," I murmured as I closed my eyes. "I am so grateful for how you have made me feel." A gentle kiss from Connor's lips caressed my hair. By the time his voice whispered into my ear, he had already told me that, "Alessandra, you have always been unique." Everything else faded into insignificance at that very instant. With my eyes closed, I surrendered to his comforting embrace. As I gently slipped into a peaceful slumber, the soothing sound of Connor's breath resonating in my ear, a tranquility I hadn't experienced in a long time enveloping me. I slept that night with the knowledge that someone loved me more than anything else, and that I wasn't alone. More valuable than everything else was that sensation. However, we were still unprepared for the unknowns and uncertainties that awaited us the following morning. I had a feeling this narrative was far from ended, but for the time being we decided to keep quiet about all that could happen in the future. This tale continues, so be sure to follow along. Keep an eye on it. Please consider following this story, enabling notifications, and leaving a comment.